The two previous videos about Northern Powerhouse Rail and Liverpool Manchester Railway set out the main similarities and differences between the two proposals, and I explained why it has been suggested that the bill for HS2 Phase 2 should be repurposed for the new railway. If you haven't watched those yet, I'd encourage you to watch them first, links in the description below. What I didn't find time to do was set out an argument for building a new line, and it could seem that I was somewhat unsupportive. But there is an argument to say that NPR or LMR cannot stand alone, without some sort of link connecting HS2 to any new east-west rail route. Although the government is keen to shift the focus to improving east-west rail links, as they believe people in the north will be more supportive of that, rather than improving north-south links. But we simply cannot ignore the chronic capacity shortage between the West Midlands and the North West. Nor should we ignore the connectivity benefits HS2 would have provided between the UK's largest regional cities. Benefits which I believe have been completely overlooked by central government and, to some extent, regional politicians. Then there's the revelation that NPR could potentially have a cost-benefit ratio of 0.4. without the inclusion of HS2, meaning that on paper it appears as if it could cost more to build than would be recouped. That's not to say a new route between Liverpool and Manchester would not be justified. In fact, I would argue that NPR should be delivered in full, not just the section which the government is currently talking about. That means building new infrastructure from Manchester east across the Pennines, and the electrification of the lines to Sheffield and Hull. But if the public are to be convinced that NPR or LMR is worth it, then it has to be sold correctly, which, in my opinion, means selling it as the North's answer to HS1. Not because it's high speed, but because the capacity argument for HS1 is well understood, with domestic high-speed services on dedicated tracks operating at speeds up to 140 miles per hour, which freed up capacity on existing services between London and the southeast. Moving what should be express east-west services away from existing lines will free up capacity on existing routes to improve local connectivity, and that is the main benefit. The NPR and LMR proposals, using a mix of new and existing infrastructure, with the inclusion of stops at Bank Quay and Manchester Airport, would provide a journey time from Liverpool to Manchester of around 35 minutes, no quicker than the fastest journey today, although current stopping services can take between 50 minutes and an hour. But my plea, if any northern politicians are watching, is do not sell LMR on the basis of journey times. Instead, the capacity and connectivity arguments should be made as strongly as possible from the outset. Building a proposed freight terminal in St Helens and remodelling Oxford Road will merely be a sticking plaster for the ongoing issues with Manchester's rail network. So, a new line and increased station capacity will be required if Andy Burnham is to fulfil his promise of providing improved B-network rail links. Further details of the freight proposals can be found in a video I released a while back, a link to which is in the description. Building new infrastructure will also improve reliability, which is perhaps one of the biggest arguments for building a new line. This is because upgrading existing infrastructure only gets you so far, but trying to cram more and more trains onto existing lines is ultimately unsustainable, especially when there is a mix of local, regional, long distance and freight services coming from destinations across the north, all fighting for a limited number of rail paths. This means a problem 50 miles away or more can impact your local rail service. Although I feel strongly that NPR should include new infrastructure across the Pennines, not just between Liverpool and Manchester, it should be made clear that providing capacity in Manchester is key to improving links from east to west. So I would argue that it is in the interests of politicians from Yorkshire and even the North East to support a new route from Liverpool to Manchester. And if the government does commit to building a new line in the autumn, which is being strongly suggested, then it will require a lot of support from politicians, business leaders and the public. As there's one thing I can guarantee, there will be strong local opposition, and there is the potential for opposition to come from further afield. I've already seen arguments which were once used to oppose HS2 now being recycled to oppose the construction of a new line in the north. So if a new route is to be delivered, then those who support the principle of improving east-west links cannot afford to be complacent. Expect a further update as soon as the government has made its announcement on its preferred option, if indeed the Chancellor agrees to fund a new line. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video. And just before I finish, can I ask that if you've enjoyed this video or found it informative, then please give it a like, as it helps my content to get noticed.